Everyone asks, why me? Why was I targeted for organized harassment or gang stalking? It means a lot to me to make this video for you. People advance a lot of theories and they blame it on religion, or that they're advocates, or they got involved in some kind of a dispute, or blood type is a real popular one. Remember that organized harassment is as old as people living together in groups. In the modern era, it has a history that goes back really 50, 60 years to create the situation we have now. In the early 70s, Daniel Ellsberg broke into the FBI office and absconded with some documents because he wanted to get evidence that the U.S. had gotten involved in Vietnam on the basis of lies. That's one thing you should take away from Daniel Ellsberg. He got that documentation, and he also found documentation that said that war protesters' claims that they were being followed and were suffering gang stalking were true claims. People didn't want to believe that stuff happened, but it was happening, and he got that on paper. After April of 1995, when the Alfred Murrah Federal Building was destroyed in Oklahoma City, the Counterterrorism Institute emerged as something that was important to this phenomenon. Then after 9/11, George W. Bush made a speech saying the U.S. would pursue terrorists and give them no quarter and make sure they had no money. He went on to say the whole world is a battlefield and all people are enemy combatants. A lot of people didn't realize that their civil liberties had just been revoked. I was not one of them. 2006, Congress passed the Military Commissions Act of 2006 that eviscerated habeas corpus and posse comitatus. It didn't eliminate them. They aren't gone. It just chose to ignore them. So your right to a speedy trial and the idea that the military wouldn't be used in police actions against civilians was pretty much just set aside. I severely criticized this law on a blog with 2 short posts, but I gave him pretty much the most severe critique that anyone gave. And I was excommunicated among alternative political writers. Then, one by one, these new news aggregator websites were absorbed and taken over by elitist interests, and one by one, I was prohibited from writing comments in them. I'm not talking about posting articles, I'm talking about just writing in the comments section. Until finally, I mean, even now, under my old pseudonym, I can't do it. In 2013, activistpost.com ran an article that was widely republished that specified 72 types of individuals who are likely to become terrorists. Now, this is an example of some of them: conservatives, libertarians, evangelical Christians, gun owners, those opposed to illegal immigration, opposed to abortion, globalism, communism, the United Nations, and the New World Order. Opposed to the New World Order? Oh, well, you terrorist. Those who believe in conspiracy theories. Anyone who complains about bias or has patriotic or anti-UN bumper stickers. If you're anti-nuclear, you might be a potential terrorist. If you're a returning veteran, give me a break. You believe in the right to bear arms. You endorse the Second Amendment, you terrorist. You oppose the federal income tax. You supported Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, or Bob Barr for president. You stockpile ammunition. And how much is that? You suddenly acquired weapons. Well, 1 minute you have one where the minute before you didn't. That's how it always happens, right? You oppose Agenda 21. Oh no, you terrorist. You dread FEMA camps. Well, you know, if you didn't want to be put in a cage, you're probably a traitor and a terrorist. As you can see, this is a ridiculous list. It's 72 items. Most of them are linked to the documents that they rely upon to draw that conclusion. And there's some ridiculous documents. Okay? That list has been widely expanded to include anyone using a cell phone, making notes, or having their hands in their pockets observed in public. Liberals. So you got conservatives. If you're conservative or liberal, you're a potential terrorist. Any sovereign citizen, that's the one that I like. It could be anybody. Yeah, you're definitely going to become a terrorist. If you belong to a militia or patriot group. Also, anyone designated an enemy of the state. And my previous video dealt with that subject. There's a strain of cannabis indica named enemy of the state. But weed is not a potential terrorist. Examples of people designated an enemy of the state include, it's an interesting list, Jack Phillips, saying he doesn't design specialty cakes for gay weddings. That's Jack Phillips of the Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood, Colorado. That issue is going to go before the Supreme Court. It's scheduled December 5th of 2017. It'll be interesting to see how they rule. You're also an enemy of the state if you were a Jew in Nazi Germany. If you are Bradley/Chelsea Manning. Edward Snowden. These are people who are engaged, the law says, engaged in hostilities against the United States. If you're a human rights group member opposing large commercial development project. Any journalist writing a news story. I am designated because my father and stepmother knew David Sid, who could do it, and they all thought it would be funny. You can tell that makes me dangerous. My favorite reason that a person is targeted is for no particular reason except that you're alive and have a name. So you see, it could be just about anybody. You're selected at random, my darlings, all right? It's not your fault. I'm going to make that point again so that hopefully you'll go away from this getting that out of it. The programs are about numbers of targets and program participants because the more targets, the more players, the more money is allocated. The more time the program persists, the more money is paid to the program. The main customers are governments and corporations because they have the money. But, I mean, if you've got the money, you can hire this service. And a lot of private individuals provide the service, and public individuals provide the service. 70% of the Department of Homeland Security's budget goes to private security contractors who do two things primarily. Enter fake law enforcement intelligence into the global criminal database network and conduct gang stalking programs. This work has no oversight. And the programs last a lifetime, unless a person is removed for some reason, which happens almost never. People who have a little money in a bank account are targeted, robbed and methodically disassembled, crippled, and killed. Killing the target is the object of these programs. So if you're targeted, they do plan to kill you. They're very casual about it. If they've been in any length of time, they've killed a large number of people. But keeping the target alive creates more revenue unless it becomes prudent to eliminate the target, or the target's body can be acquired for sale of body parts in illegal trade. In China, people are in the street demonstrating against the practice of having live body part donors, and the donation kills the donor. So this is a bigger problem than I thought it was, and the news doesn't want to report it. Federal law enforcement makes arrests all over the country for people engaged in this illegal trade, and they're big arrests with hundreds of people round up. Selection of targets is not based on empirical data, but on personal bias, presumption, poorly conceived vulnerability assessments, and predictions pulled from thin air. There's a link to a report about START in the description. This is study about terrorism. The number of people placed on the enemies list and terrorist watch lists is classified as is the information in criminal database files, which can't be divulged to targets without authorization under federal law. Well, who gives this authorization? And if someone is telling me something about my criminal database file, what am I going to do? Call 911? No. I'm going to say thank you, and that will be the end of it. 8 million Americans were thought to be watch listed in 2008. Well, that was 9 years ago. That number has increased exponentially. An ACLU report describing watch listing and the classified criminal database network is linked down in the description. If you're unfortunate enough to be declared an enemy of the state, in addition to being watch listed, or if not watch listed, you're no longer subject to civil or public law. You are stripped of the law's protection. You're subject to military law. That means you can be arrested for no reason, held indefinitely without charges, a lawyer or a court date, tortured and killed, and the state has full authority to seize your assets, or anyone can steal your assets without legal consequences. You can be executed without charges or a trial, or anyone can murder you and evade prosecution. You can't hire a lawyer for any purpose, which is where I am now. I can't hire a lawyer for any purpose. You also find it difficult getting professional services, doctors, accountants. Man, they don't want to work for you. And they're told they don't have to help you. State agencies won't help me. Nobody will help me. The Liberty Preservation Act is a model law enacted in California, Michigan, and Virginia, and introduced in Georgia. It prohibits the state from engaging in indefinite detention without charges. That is, eviscerating habeas corpus. And in the description, there's a link to that. You can read that. You should be an advocate for the enactment of the Liberty Preservation Act in your state. Private security contractors charge large fees for activities that break the law of every state. They have prosecutorial immunity and are tax exempt. These provisions destroy the virtue and integrity of even the most stalwart individual and turn them into monsters and killers, mass murderers, hired assassins. Major provisions of this Nazi-inspired concept are found in NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, which is a little bit misunderstood these days. It has for 60 years funded all things military. It's revised and reenacted each year to fund Department of Defense. Many people think that NDAA just revokes your civil liberties, but it funds all the military. It's a voluminous law. So some of the myths regarding NDAA include, and this is the 2012 law. This is when it started to become controversial about taking out habeas corpus and posse comitatus. 2012 NDAA doesn't apply to American citizens. That's a myth. It does. 2012 NDAA suspends habeas corpus. It doesn't suspend it. It just ignores it. 2012 NDAA violates posse comitatus. No, just ignores it. 2012 NDAA is not unconstitutional until the Supreme Court says so. No, it's unconstitutional on its face. 2012 NDAA only codifies the authorized use of military force. No. It's not the president's fault. It's not Congress's fault. Yes, it is their fault. They can say no to this, but no, they sign it. The 2012 NDAA is an executive order. No, it's an enacted law. It's in place. The entire NDAA authorized the application of the law of war, military detention. No. Judge Forrest's September 2012 injunction blocking the detention of provisions is still in effect. No. Indefinite detention is the main problem with 2012 NDAA. No, it has other problems in it. And incidentally, the 2018 version allows for the induction of women should the draft be reinstated. The president has this power, but he won't use it. Well, he will, and he does, and his proxies who are supposed to report to him and don't, they also use it. Section 1021E protects American citizens from the 2012 NDAA. No, it doesn't. These provisions were marketed as things to be used against enemy combatants in foreign battlefields, but clicking different tick boxes on the forms, you can use it against anyone. Sections 1021 and 1022 expired since indefinite detention isn't in the 2013 NDAA. Well, it's been in there ever since, and nothing's expired, and it's still in there. So, call, go visit, write your state representatives and ask them to enact the Liberty Preservation Act. The 2013 Louis Gohmert Amendment, Section 1033, fixed the problems with the 2012 NDAA. No, it's a myth. 1031 and 1032 don't exist in the 2012 NDAA, so the detention provision was removed before it became law. That's a myth. The end of hostilities is the end date. So detainment is not indefinite. That's not right. They can hold you forever. And believe me, a lot of people who've been put in jail without charges, they don't know why they are there, have hanged themselves. COINTELPRO and organized harassment programs operate virtually without oversight. After dealing with a federal finance fraud criminal case and dealing with FBI and talking with my local fusion center, I came to question where these programs are connected. And if they work outside the law and Constitution, they have a symbiotic relationship with shadow government, and more precisely, CIA deep state. CIA agent turned whistleblower Kevin Shipp's great video is linked in the description. Tell me if you think my socio-political model is correct. Let's have a little fun, shall we? Because when you talk about gang stalking, how he got picked out, and it's just nothing but carloads and barrels of fun. Okay? Okay, so we got socio-political flowchart. Whoops. You can see that. You can see that or not. Didn't really show. Anyway, socio-political flowchart. You gotta use a darker color. Show up a little better, maybe. Maybe. Okay. Alright. Down here at the bottom, got we the people, which we'll call your peeps. Okay. That's us. Now, above that, you got city and state government. Like this. See there? Yeah. Okay. Above this, you got your three branches: executive, legislative, judicial, federal government, we call FedGov, got your departments, agencies, bureaus, and so forth. We call that et al. Now, ordinarily, we're all raised with the idea that that's just as far as it goes. And that when you get to FedGov, you're at the very top. But what Kevin Shipp seems to be saying is, above that, you got shadow government. And shadow government consists of a variety of different interests. And when you get up above FedGov, it turns into hundreds of thousands and then millions of people who have they have access to classified information, and we don't know who they are, and we don't know what they're doing. All right? But then you've got this little thing up here that turns out to be the top of the chart. CIA Deep State. And there you have it. There's your peeps, city state government, federal government, shadow government, CIA Deep State. CIA Deep State runs the world, right? Well, so they tell me. And in my opinion, these programs are plugged in to CIA Deep State so that you can't get at it. They didn't invent this, but they're probably the only ones who can kill it. And in my opinion, they own this monster, and they can darn sure well kill it. Or, you know, what's going to happen to us? We don't have much of a future is what. Organized harassment is illegal. Extrajudicial punishment, torture, stealing, murder are wrong, immoral, illegal, even for real terrorists. The ACLU report makes an interesting point. If you have information and evidence that the person committed a crime, and a prosecutor can make charges, you get a warrant, you pick them up. Otherwise, leave them alone. Don't follow them around and destroy their lives. And whatever you do, don't forget. Being targeted, being in a stalking program is 0% your fault. 0% your fault.